The slap came so fast I didn't have time to react. My glasses went flying, shattering on the elegant ballroom floor as 130 guests watched in absolute silence. My cheek burned, but the pain in my chest was far worse. Sabrina Lowell, my daughter-in-law, had just slapped me on her wedding day because I refused to hand over the keys to my apartment. "That's what you get for being so selfish," she screamed at me in front of everyone. "A woman your age doesn't need so much space." The silence that followed was deafening. No one moved to help me as I crouched down, trembling, to pick up my broken glasses. Some guests looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered among themselves. But no one, absolutely no one, dared to defend the poor old mother-in-law who had just been publicly humiliated. My son, Daniel Hart, stood motionless, his gaze fixed on the floor as if I were invisible. "You're not welcome here anymore," Sabrina continued, smoothing her pristine wedding gown. "Daniel and I need our privacy to start our new life. Your apartment would be perfect for us while we shop for something better." Her words were pure venom. For months, I had endured her condescending comments about my worn-out clothes, my old car, my simple life, but this had crossed a line that should never have been touched. I rose slowly, feeling all eyes on me like sharp daggers. Tears streamed down my face. But inside, something had changed forever. That slap wasn't just a physical blow. It was the final straw. For years, I had kept a low profile, living with humility and discretion. I had secrets no one, not even my own son, knew. My name is Eleanor Hart. I am 68 years old, and all my life I have been a woman who prefers discretion over ostentation. I work at a small flower shop 3 days a week. I drive a 10-year-old car. I buy my clothes at discount stores. To the outside world, especially to Sabrina, I am just a middle-class widow living on a fixed income. But that's exactly the image I have carefully cultivated for decades. What none of those people looking at me with pity knew was that my life had been completely different before my husband passed. Henry Hart had not been the office worker everyone believed. We had made a conscious decision to live modestly, to keep our true wealth a secret, to protect our family's privacy in a way that I now understood had been prophetic. As I walked out of the ballroom, the guests' conversations followed me like a toxic cloud. "Poor thing, she looks so fragile," whispered Sabrina's aunt. "The bride is right. That woman can't take care of herself anymore," added Daniel's cousin. "She should be in a retirement home, not living alone," another guest commented with false compassion. Each word was like acid pouring on open wounds. The cool temperature of the ballroom's air conditioning contrasted sharply with the suffocating heat in my chest. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my cell phone in my worn black purse, a purse I had used for 5 years. Not because I couldn't afford a new one, but because I had learned to value practicality over appearances, something my daughter-in-law would clearly never understand. I dialed a number I knew by heart. A number I hadn't used in over a year because I had naively hoped it would never be necessary. "Miguel, it's Eleanor. I need you to come to the Royal Oaks ballroom immediately. Yes, right now. Bring the documents you know about. It's time for them to know the truth." My voice trembled, but there was a firmness in it I hadn't felt in a long time. "Are you sure, Mrs. Hart?" Miguel Alvarez asked with his professional but concerned voice. "Once we do this, there's no turning back." I glanced back at the ballroom one last time, where I could see Sabrina laughing with her friends, likely telling them how she had put her useless mother-in-law in her place. Daniel was by her side, smiling weakly, showing not a single ounce of remorse for what he had just witnessed. "Completely sure," I replied. 30 minutes. Miguel, no more." I hung up the phone and walked toward my car with determined steps. For the first time in years, I was going to drop the mask I had used to protect my family. For the first time, they were going to meet the real Eleanor Hart. And when that happened, when reality hit their perfect fake worlds, they would understand the true meaning of the word regret. The parking lot was quiet, lit by streetlights that cast long shadows between the cars. I sat in my old sedan and waited 30 minutes for their lives to change forever. 30 minutes for them to discover they had made the biggest mistake of their lives by humiliating the woman who had secretly been taking care of them more than they could ever imagine. While I waited in my car, memories of how I had reached this moment began to flood my mind like an unstoppable avalanche. It had all started exactly 2.5 years ago when Daniel came to my apartment with that nervous smile I knew so well from when he was a boy. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special," he had told me. And there she was, Sabrina Lowell, with her perfectly styled hair, her designer clothes, and that smile that didn't reach her eyes. From the very first moment, I knew something wasn't right. The way Sabrina looked at my apartment that first evening told me everything I needed to know. She didn't see a home filled with memories. She saw square footage, location, potential, an asset, not a life. "How cozy," she murmured, glancing at my second-hand furniture and faded curtains. Her tone suggested the opposite. Daniel, completely blinded by what he believed was love, didn't notice the condescension in her voice. That first dinner had been a silent disaster. Sabrina barely touched the food I had lovingly prepared, claiming she was watching her figure. When I asked her about her family, she gave evasive answers, but not before asking about my financial situation with a curiosity I found alarming. "And how do you manage on a widow's pension, Eleanor?" she said with fake concern. "It must be hard to get by on so little money." What Sabrina didn't know was that I had been observing her as much as she had been observing me. Over the next few months, I began to notice patterns that put me on high alert. Every time she visited, she made comments about how outdated everything was, my decor, my kitchen, even my clothes. But beneath those remarks, her eyes always lingered on the things that truly mattered: the prime location of the building, the panoramic view from my balcony, the size of the rooms. One day, while Daniel was in the bathroom, I overheard her speaking softly on the phone in my kitchen. "Yes, Mom, his mother's apartment is in a super expensive area. If I can get her to move to a smaller place, we could stay here until we have our own place," she whispered. "She's so naive she'll probably even thank us for helping her with the transition." Her words cut through me like a knife, but I maintained my composure when she returned to the living room, pretending nothing had happened. From that moment on, every interaction with Sabrina became a carefully orchestrated performance on both our parts. She played the concerned daughter-in-law, worried about my well-being, while I pretended to be the vulnerable old woman who needed guidance. But inside, I was gathering information, watching her moves, understanding her intentions. It was a game of chess, and we both believed we were winning. The following months brought a gradual escalation in her attempts at manipulation. "Eleanor, I've seen some lovely apartments for people your age," she suggested once, sliding glossy brochures across my coffee table. "All-inclusive services, no maintenance worries." Then came the more direct pressures. "You can't keep living alone at your age. It's dangerous. What if you fall and no one finds out for days?" Daniel, my own son, began to echo the same phrases like a well-trained parrot. "Mom, Sabrina's right. Maybe it would be better to consider moving somewhere more manageable." Seeing him slowly transform into her echo was more painful than any insult. The son I had raised with love and sacrifice now saw me not as a person, but as an obstacle. The psychological campaign intensified after their engagement. Visits became more frequent, but more tense. Sabrina started bringing real estate magazines, circling listings with childish hearts drawn around luxury condos. "I'm just exploring options for you, Eleanor. I want to make sure you have the best quality of life possible," she said, arranging the magazines like a real estate agent preparing a pitch. But I had begun my own investigation. One afternoon, after they left to run wedding errands, I called an old friend in real estate. "Monica, I need you to check something for me," I told her. "There's a couple very interested in my apartment. I want to know everything about their financial situation." What she discovered chilled me. Daniel and Sabrina were buried in debt. The wedding they were planning cost more than $50, financed entirely on credit cards and loans. Their rented apartment was 3 months behind on payments. Their luxury cars were financed. Their lifestyle was a facade built on collapsing credit. Everything started to make sense. The rush to get married. The insistence that I move. The constant talk about my future at my age. It wasn't love binding this couple. It was desperation. And my apartment, located in one of the most exclusive areas of the city, was their life raft. The revelation hit me like a slap to the soul. My son, my Daniel, had chosen the path of manipulation rather than honesty. He had allowed a woman to convince him that his own mother was not someone to love, but someone to use. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, their attempts intensified. "Eleanor, you can't be selfish," Sabrina told me 3 days before the ceremony. "Daniel and I have sacrificed so much. The least you can do is help with housing." There was no more pretense. No more fake concern, only entitlement. That night, I made the most important decision of my life. I called Miguel Alvarez, my financial advisor. "Miguel, I need you to prepare some documents," I said quietly. "It's possible I may soon have to reveal information I've kept hidden for years." "Are you sure?" he asked after a pause. "Once this comes out, it cannot be undone." "I'm sure," I replied. "They've mistaken silence for weakness. That ends now." And now, sitting in my car outside the Royal Oaks ballroom, waiting for Miguel to arrive, I knew one truth. Everything had led to this moment. It was no longer about protecting them. It was about protecting myself. 15 minutes until everything changed. 15 minutes until they met the real Eleanor Hart. The biggest humiliation had happened just 2 weeks before the wedding. During what Sabrina called an important family meeting, she arrived at my apartment accompanied not only by Daniel, but also by her parents. A perfectly planned ambush. "Eleanor, we want to talk to you about your future," said Marlene Lowell, a haughty woman who looked at me as if I were an inconvenience rather than a human being. "We believe it's time for you to make responsible decisions about your life," added Gregory Lowell, her husband, surveying my apartment with the cold eyes of a property appraiser. "At your age," Marlene continued, "living alone in such a big place is not only unnecessary, but dangerous. What if you have a medical emergency and no one finds out for days?" Their words were rehearsed, too polished to be spontaneous. Daniel remained silent through it all, nodding occasionally, like a puppet trying not to show his strings. Seeing my own son sitting there, side by side with those who treated me like a burden, was like watching the last light of hope die inside me. "Mom," he finally said, in a voice I no longer recognized. "They're right. Sabrina and I have been talking, and we think it would be better for everyone if you moved to a place more appropriate for your age." "Appropriate for my age?" I repeated, feeling my anger begin to simmer beneath my skin. "And who exactly decides what's appropriate for me? You?" Marlene and Gregory exchanged a knowing look, as if my resistance confirmed something they had already agreed on. "Eleanor," Marlene insisted, her voice sweet but venomous. "We understand this may be difficult to accept, but you must think about what's best for Daniel and Sabrina." "What's best for them?" I murmured, starting to understand the full extent of the conspiracy being woven behind my back. "Let me guess, my apartment would be perfect for them to start their married life. Right?" The silence that followed was all the answer I needed. Sabrina seized control then, deploying her full arsenal of manipulation. "It's not just about the apartment," she said, placing her hand theatrically over her heart. "It's about your comfort. We've found a wonderful residence for seniors, 24-hour medical staff, social activities, prepared meals." I felt ill at her words. "And what exactly do you think I'm going through, Sabrina?" I asked, feigning confusion. "Well," she replied, glancing at Daniel for support. "Loneliness, financial uncertainty, fear of not being able to care for yourself. It's normal at your age. Eleanor, you don't have to be ashamed of needing help." The audacity of this 28-year-old woman, telling me what was normal for someone my age, left me speechless. But then I saw something truly chilling in her eyes. Entitlement. Not suggestion, not concern, ownership. "We've run the numbers," Gregory interjected, pulling out a folder they had prepared in advance. "The residence would cost around $2,500 a month. With the sale of this apartment, You'd have enough to cover it for many years, and still have something left to help Daniel and Sabrina with their startup costs. There it was. The truth. It was never about my safety. It was about my assets. And if I refuse? I asked, though I knew the answer. Daniel spoke, but it was not my son's voice. It was the voice of someone I did not know. Mom, let's not make this difficult. If your mental health deteriorates and you can't make rational decisions, legal measures might have to be considered. The threat was clear. If I didn't cooperate, they would attempt to declare me incompetent. That night, after they left, smug, confident, certain I would yield, I cried for the first time in years. Not from sadness, but for the final death of the illusions I had clung to about my family. I called Miguel immediately. I need you to investigate something urgently, I told him, my voice unsteady but determined. I want to know the exact financial situation of Daniel and Sabrina. Everything, debts, income, liabilities, everything. What came back was worse than I had imagined. Daniel earned $45 a year as a sales manager, but was $80 in credit card debt. Sabrina worked part-time as an image consultant, earning barely $4 a year, but spent like a CEO. Their combined debts exceeded $120. They were months behind on rent. Their luxury cars were leased on loans they could not afford. They were sinking, and they wanted to drag me down with them. But the cruelest discovery came at the end of the report. For the past 6 months, Daniel had been inquiring about legal procedures to take financial control over elderly family members. My own son had been preparing to strip me of everything. Everything. The last threads of denial inside me snapped that night. I understood something very clearly. They weren't just planning to take my home. They were planning to take my freedom. In the days leading up to the wedding, their pressure became relentless. Every visit, every phone call, every carefully phrased concern had a single objective: break me. Wear me down, make me surrender. Eleanor, you can't keep being so stubborn, Sabrina had said only 3 days before the ceremony. Daniel and I have sacrificed so much for this wedding. The least you can do is offer us stability. Her tone had finally dropped the mask. There was no affection, no courtesy, just demand. That night, I stood at my kitchen window, staring at the city lights and remembering the promises I had once made to myself. Promises of dignity, of autonomy, of never becoming a burden or a victim. That was the night I called Miguel Alvarez. Miguel, I need you to prepare the documents. It may be time to reveal everything I've kept hidden. There was a pause. I could almost hear him straighten in his chair. Eleanor, are you certain? Once we do this, there is no turning back. Once the truth is out, it cannot be undone. I am certain, I answered. They have mistaken silence for weakness. That ends now. Blank, blank. And now, days later, I sat in my car outside the Royal Oaks ballroom, waiting, 30 minutes before the entire facade would begin to fall. The night breeze drifted through the half-open window as the ballroom lights glowed in the distance. I could hear faint music, laughter, clinking glasses. In 30 minutes, that music would die. In 30 minutes, the woman they thought they could exploit would disappear forever. In her place would stand the real Eleanor Hart. Blank, blank. While I waited, my mind flooded with memories, like an avalanche I could no longer suppress. The moment I truly knew they had crossed the line had come during that family intervention. That night, after receiving Miguel's report, I had sat at my dining table surrounded by documents, loan statements, debt ledgers, credit defaults, all bearing Daniel and Sabrina's names. But it was one detail that truly broke me. Daniel had repeatedly contacted banks asking how to take legal control of my assets. My son. My only son. Preparing to have me declared unfit. To trap me inside a facility. To sell my home. To access my accounts. To become my keeper. For years, I had feared losing him to death. I never imagined losing him to greed. Blank, blank. I wasn't just a burden in their eyes. I was a target. Blank, blank. The hour after that realization was the darkest in my recent memory. I considered everything: escape, surrender, even silence, anything to avoid what was coming. But then, I saw my reflection in the kitchen window. My own eyes, filled not with tears, but with something far older. Resolve. I whispered aloud. Eleanor, if you don't protect yourself now, no one ever will. I reached for the phone and dialed Miguel. Blank. Now, back in the present, the ballroom seemed almost surreal. The laughter echoing inside those walls was built on lies, on illusions. They thought they had broken me with that slap. But all they did was awaken me. Blank. Headlights swept across the parking lot. A dark sedan pulled in beside mine. Miguel Alvarez stepped out, holding a leather case under his arm. He looked at me through the windshield and gave a small, solemn nod. It was time. I stepped out of my car, my hands trembling, not from fear, but from the weight of what was about to happen. Mrs. Hart, he said gently, I have everything: the transfer cancellations, the lease guarantor withdrawal, the inheritance amendment, the legal notices. He hesitated. Eleanor, once we enter that ballroom, there will be no way to undo any of this. I looked past him, toward the glowing entrance doors. Inside was my son. Inside was the woman who had slapped me. Inside were the people who had stared at me as if I were nothing. I inhaled slowly. Miguel, I have lived my entire life protecting others. Tonight, I protect myself. We began walking. Each step toward the ballroom felt like crossing a boundary between who I had been and who I would become. Inside those walls, everything they believed about me would shatter. I was not a poor, helpless widow. I was Eleanor Hart. And I was done being silent. The music inside the ballroom had softened into a slow melody, the kind played during wedding photographs. I could see silhouettes moving across the polished floor as I approached the entrance with Miguel Alvarez beside me. Laughter, camera flashes, and clinking glasses filled the air, oblivious to what was about to unfold. When we stepped through the doors, conversations began to falter, faces turned toward us, curiosity quickly shifting into confusion. Then unease. I saw Sabrina Lowell first. She stood in the center of the room, radiant in her wedding gown, surrounded by bridesmaids. Her smile faded the instant she saw me. What are you doing here, Eleanor? She snapped, her voice sharp enough to slice through the silence. You already caused a scene. Isn't that enough humiliation for one night? Before I could respond, Miguel stepped forward, speaking with the measured authority of someone who knew exactly what he was doing. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. My name is Miguel Alvarez, legal and financial advisor to Mrs. Eleanor Hart. I have urgent matters to address with Mr. Daniel Hart and Mrs. Sabrina Lowell. A ripple of confusion spread across the room. Some guests exchanged glances, others pulled out their phones, sensing something extraordinary was about to happen. Daniel finally stepped forward, his face pale. Mom, what is this? Miguel opened the folder he carried. Mr. Hart, he began, you are hereby notified that the financial guarantee provided by your mother for your current lease has been terminated. Your landlord will be notified tomorrow morning. You will have 30 days to secure a new guarantor or vacate the property. Daniel blinked rapidly, unable to process the words. Financial guarantee? What is he talking about? Mom? Miguel did not pause. Additionally, the monthly transfers of $4,500 that Mrs. Hart has been making for the past 3 years, covering rent, credit card payments, insurance, and miscellaneous personal expenses, have been permanently suspended, effective immediately. A gasp broke from somewhere in the crowd. I heard whispers. She was paying for them? $4,500? For 3 years? Sabrina laughed, high-pitched and frantic. This is absurd. Daniel doesn't have a rich mother. Look at her. Look at the car she drives. She's a poor widow who works in a flower shop. Miguel remained calm. Appearances, Mrs. Lowell, are not always what they seem. The room fell into deeper silence. Daniel turned to me, tears of confusion filling his eyes. You've been paying for everything? I looked at him steadily. For 3 years, Daniel, I paid your rent. I covered your debts. I kept you afloat while you called me a liability. Before he could respond, Miguel spoke once more. There is one final matter. Mrs. Hart has revoked the financial guarantee for this wedding celebration. The venue, catering, photography, and entertainment, totaling $53, are no longer secured. Payment is now due immediately. A collective murmur swept the ballroom. Several guests instinctively stood up. Some reached for their belongings. Others stared wide-eyed, unable to look away. I saw Rafael Martinez, the ballroom manager, approaching from the perimeter, a stack of documents in hand. His expression grave. Daniel whispered, horrified, "Mom, you paid for the wedding?" "For everything," I replied softly. "Even when you treated me as an obligation. I remained your safety net." Sabrina's shock finally cracked into rage. "You're doing this to destroy us. You're jealous. You bitter old." I met her gaze, my voice calm. "No, Sabrina, this is not destruction. This is consequence." The room held its breath. "This is what happens," I continued, "when kindness is mistaken for weakness. When someone believes they can take and take, without ever showing respect." Daniel took a step forward, trembling. "Mom, please, we can fix this. Just talk to me." I turned away, feeling the final thread between us begin to break. I had spent a lifetime protecting him. But tonight, I was protecting myself. The ballroom, once filled with music and laughter, now pulsed with stunned silence. Champagne glasses trembled in hands. Guests glanced between Daniel, Sabrina, and me, realizing this was no family dispute. This was a reckoning. Sabrina, her makeup cracking at the edges, stepped forward with fury scorching through her humiliation. "You can't do this," she shouted. "You're his mother. You owe us. We are your family." I turned to her, my voice steady. "Family is not defined by blood, Sabrina. It is defined by respect. And tonight, you showed none." She recoiled as if struck. But I continued. "You slapped me in front of 130 guests. You told me I was no longer welcome. You demanded the keys to my home as if I were an obstacle. Not a human being. Now you are discovering that I was never the burden. I was the foundation." A murmur passed through the crowd. Some guests bowed their heads, ashamed of staying silent during the earlier humiliation. Others, phones still in hand, recorded every word. Daniel stepped forward, desperation replacing his anger. "Mom, please. This isn't the place. Let's talk privately." "No," I answered, louder than I intended. "You made it public when you stood there and let her strike me. You watched. You said nothing. You let them believe I was disposable. Now they will hear the truth." Miguel opened another document from his folder. His voice remained calm, professional, merciless. "Over the past 36 months, Mrs. Eleanor Hart has transferred a total of $162 to support Mr. Hart and Ms. Lowell. This includes $48 for rent, $44 for credit card payments, $18 for vehicle insurance, and $22 for miscellaneous expenses." Gasps. Whispers. A few guests audibly muttered, "My God?" Sabrina shook her head violently. "Lies. All lies. You're just an old woman trying to look powerful." I looked at her without anger. Only clarity. "Powerful?" I repeated softly. "No, Sabrina, I am simply done being silent." Her face contorted. "Wild. You can't change the will. Daniel is your only son. You can't cut him out." "I already have," I replied. Miguel confirmed. "All previous inheritances designated to Mr. Hart have been redirected to foundations advocating for senior protection against family abuse." It was as though the floor cracked under their feet. Daniel stared at me as if finally seeing me for the first time in years. You disinherited me?" I met his eyes. "I protected you your entire life. I paid your debts. I saved you from eviction. I stood between you and ruin. And in return, you planned to take everything from me, even my freedom." His lips parted in horror. "No, it wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," I said. "You investigated legal guardianship over me. You asked banks how to gain financial control in case I became incompetent. You prepared to declare me unfit to handle my own affairs. Daniel's face drained of all color. How do you know that? Because I am not incompetent. I answered coldly. I am informed. Blank, underscore, blank. A shifting of bodies, eyes flicked to cameras, to bridesmaids, to the swinging ballroom doors. Everyone understood now. This was no dramatic performance, this was a final judgment. Sabrina lunged forward. We were trying to help you. You're delusional. You need supervision. I raised my voice, but it was calm, lethal. No, what I need is freedom. Freedom from manipulation. Freedom from entitlement. Freedom from being treated like a key to someone else's future. I looked at both of them, the son I had loved more than life. And the woman who had poisoned him. You thought I was weak. You thought you could break me. But tonight, you set me free. Blank, underscore, blank. Just then, Rafael Martinez, the ballroom manager, approached Miguel, holding a stack of papers. Mr. Alvarez, he said quietly. We've received notice. The payment guarantee has been voided. We will need immediate resolution. His arrival sent unease through the room. Guests began gathering purses, clutches, jackets. Some lingered, hungry for spectacle. Daniel reached for me with trembling hands. Mom, please, don't do this. We can make this right. Just don't ruin our wedding. I looked at him with a pain that felt older than my bones. Your wedding is not ruined because of me. It is ruined because of greed. Because of arrogance. Because you forgot who raised you. He dropped his hand as if burned. Sabrina collapsed into a chair. Tulle spilling like a fallen throne. Tears streaking mascara down her face. Everything is ruined, she whispered. No, I said quietly. Only the lies are ruined. Blank, underscore, blank. I turned to leave. For the first time in my life, I walked away without looking back. As Miguel and I walked toward the exit, the ballroom behind us dissolved into chaos, guests arguing with staff. Waiters unsure whether to serve or clear tables. Whispers crackling like static in every corner. But through that storm, not a single voice called my name to defend me. Until one did. Wait, Eleanor. I turned. It was Nora Kane, my niece, Daniel's cousin. She stood near the back of the room with tears in her eyes. Hands trembling, face pale with shock. She wasn't part of the spectacle. She hadn't moved, hadn't filmed. She had simply watched, quiet, devastated. She stepped forward. Aunt Eleanor, I didn't know. She said, voice breaking. I swear, I didn't know anything about what they were planning. If I had known, I would have tried to stop them. My heart ached. Of all people, Nora had never treated me like a burden. I nodded gently. I know, Nora, you have never been like them. She approached, her eyes glistening. But why didn't you tell us about the money? About everything you'd been doing? It was a question she deserved an answer to. I took a breath. Because wealth changes people. Nora, I've seen families destroyed by inheritances. Children turned into strangers by greed. Your Uncle Henry and I made a choice, to live simply. To protect what really mattered. She nodded, her jaw trembling. But Daniel, he wasn't always like this. When we were kids, he adored you. He would have defended you against anyone. What happened to him? I felt the sting of a truth I had never spoken aloud. Sabrina happened. Greed disguised as love happened. And I paused, swallowing a knot of regret. I helped it happen. By protecting him from every consequence. I robbed him of responsibility. Nora's tears spilled. Guests nearby, pretending not to listen, were now holding their breath. Before I could speak again, Miguel leaned toward me. Mrs. Hart, the manager is approaching. It's time. Indeed, Rafael Martinez was striding toward us. Contract papers in hand and tension etched across his face. It was only a matter of time before he demanded immediate payment from whoever remained inside. I turned back to Nora, placing a hand gently on her cheek. You are not responsible for any of this. I told her softly, but I want you to remember tonight. Remember what respect looks like, and what it doesn't. Her shoulders shook. I love you, Aunt Eleanor, no matter what happens. I love you too, I whispered, and that love does not require silence. She closed her eyes and nodded. Nora Kane, the only heart who had not forgotten what dignity meant. Blank, underscore, blank. Miguel touched my elbow. We should go. As we walked toward the exit, I saw guests beginning to gather their things in a panic. Others were still frozen, wide-eyed, clutching their phones. One woman whispered, "She was paying everything?" Another replied, "And they slapped her?" But it was not their judgment I carried out those doors. It was my own freedom. Blank, underscore, blank. The ballroom doors closed behind us. The muffled noise of unraveling celebration faded. Outside, the night was quiet, almost peaceful. The cool air brushed my face, drying the last of my tears. For the first time in years, I felt something unfamiliar. Not happiness, not pride. Relief. "Are you all right?" Miguel asked gently. I nodded, for the first time in a very long time. He studied me for a moment, then said, "Everything set in motion tonight cannot be undone, Eleanor." "That is the point," I replied. Blank, underscore, blank. We reached the edge of the parking lot, and then I saw him. Walter Boone, my neighbor, my friend, waiting beside my car, clutching something in his hands. The brown folder. The one I had asked him to retrieve. The one that held every secret I had kept. He stepped forward, concern etched deep into his aging features. "Eleanor, I saw part of what happened. Are you sure about this?" I met his eyes, steady. "Walter," I said, "I have been sure since the moment she slapped me." He handed me the folder. "Then it's time they see what a quiet woman is capable of." He murmured. Blank, underscore, blank. I took the folder. I did not look back. Everything that needed to break had broken. But what needed to begin had only just started. 3 days after the wedding, my apartment had become a sanctuary of silence, a kind of peace I had not felt in years. No knocks on the door. No forced smiles. No demands disguised as concern. Walter Boone came by every morning with coffee and pastries, checking on me as he always had, long before any of this unfolded. That night, he said quietly over the kitchen table, "I watched you walk out of that ballroom with your head high. That wasn't a woman defeated. That was a woman who finally stopped apologizing for her strength." His words were a salve I didn't know I needed. The phone, however, had not been as kind. In 72 hours, Daniel had called 37 times. The first messages were furious, accusing me of betrayal. By the 10th, his tone shifted, pleading, bargaining, begging. "Mom, please, just call me back. We need to fix this." I was upset. Sabrina was upset. "Let's just talk. We can figure something out." I did not respond. Sabrina, meanwhile, sent 14 messages, each one more hysterical than the last. "You made us look like monsters. People are talking about us everywhere. I swear to God, Eleanor, if you don't undo this, I will make you regret it. Do you think anyone will believe you over us?" I still did not respond. Even Marlene and Gregory Lowell had come to my door twice, ringing my bell with the entitlement of creditors rather than family. They left after a single sentence from me. "If you do not step away from my property, I will involve law enforcement." They left without another word. Blank, underscore, blank. That morning, Miguel arrived, carrying the weight of news I already sensed was coming. "Mrs. Hart," he said, sitting opposite me with a calm expression, "I've received updates on all pending matters. Daniel and Sabrina were formally evicted from their apartment yesterday. The ballroom has initiated legal action to recover the $53 owed. Their credit cards have been frozen. Collection agencies have already begun contact." I listened in silence. "And where are they now?" I finally asked. "With her parents," Miguel replied, "in a 2-bedroom unit already housing 3 people. According to my sources, the situation is tense." I nodded. I felt neither victory nor vindication. Only inevitability. Blank, underscore, blank. That afternoon, while I watered my plants on the balcony, a familiar car pulled up outside the building. Nora Kane stepped out, but she wasn't alone. With her were Monica Patel, my longtime friend in real estate, And Walter, who had already returned from his morning visit. The urgency in their faces told me this was not a social call. Aunt Eleanor, Nora said the moment she crossed the threshold. We've been investigating since the wedding night. There are things you need to know before it's too late. She carried a folder, thinner than mine, but equally dangerous. Too late for what? I asked. Monica spoke first. For the last 3 days, I've been digging into Daniel and Sabrina's legal movements. What we found goes beyond financial dependence. Eleanor, they were planning this for over a year. She laid documents across my kitchen table. I found evidence that Sabrina consulted attorneys specializing in elder guardianship cases. They were constructing a case to have you declared mentally incompetent to gain full legal control over your assets. Walter leaned forward, voice low. And that wasn't all. After you left the ballroom, I overheard Sabrina on the phone. She said you'd ruined Plan A, but they still had Plan B. A chill moved through me. Plan B? I repeated, feeling both anger and clarity rise within me. Nora's voice trembled. Aunt Eleanor, they've been telling people, neighbors, even co-workers, that you're losing your mind, that you're paranoid, that tonight's outburst at the wedding was evidence that you're not capable of handling your affairs. The betrayal had layers yet unseen. It's not just gossip, Monica said, sliding over a signed affidavit. They've already gathered witness statements from guests who were at the wedding, statements framing you as unstable, vindictive, irrational. I exhaled slowly. So this was how far they were willing to go. Not satisfied with my home. Not content with my bank accounts. They wanted my sanity. Blank, blank. As the last page settled on the table, Miguel entered, having returned for our scheduled follow-up. It seems, he said, having already read the room, that we are arriving at the same conclusion. He placed a legal document in front of me. Yesterday, he continued, Daniel filed a preliminary petition requesting a court evaluation of your competency. Citing irrational behavior and destructive financial decisions, specifically referencing your actions at the wedding. I closed my eyes, not in shock, but in recognition. They hadn't just tried to strip me of property. They intended to erase me. Blank. When I opened my eyes again, I felt strangely calm. Then, I said, we proceed. Miguel nodded. We will need evidence, paperwork, testimony, surveillance. I reached for my folder, the one with every transfer, every bank guarantee, every act of silent sacrifice. Everything they used against me. I said, I will use truth against them. Blank. That night, as the city lights flickered beyond my balcony, I whispered to no one in particular. They tried to bury me. They forgot I was the seed. The room was heavy with silence. The kind that follows revelation. Nora, Monica, and Walter remained seated, their expressions etched with concern. Miguel stood quietly, his arms crossed, already forming legal strategies in his mind. But then Walter broke the silence. A hint of something unusual in his voice. There's something you need to see. Eleanor, he said, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it, and turned the screen toward me. A video. I recognized the room instantly, the ballroom. The moment, the confrontation. But it wasn't the slap. It wasn't Sabrina's screaming. It was me, standing still as stone. My voice calm, my truth laid bare before 130 witnesses. Caption. This mother saved her son for years, until he tried to take everything from her. View count, 1.8 million. Comments, thousands. I blinked, stunned. What is this? It went viral overnight, Walter said softly. People are calling you, the woman who fought back. Monica leaned forward. I've been tracking the posts. Majority of comments are supporting you. They're sharing their own stories, parents manipulated by their own children. Nora's voice trembled. Aunt Eleanor, people are calling you a hero. Blank. I swiped through the comments. My eyes scanning words from strangers around the world. This is why elders hide their money. I watched my own mother go through this. Thank you, Eleanor, for showing us how to stand up. Not all abuse leaves bruises. She didn't lose a son, she escaped a predator. I felt tears forming, not of pain, but of recognition. For the first time since that slap, I did not feel alone. Blank, underscore, blank. Miguel nodded as if confirming an internal calculation. These videos may become our strongest defense. It is difficult to claim someone is mentally incompetent when thousands of people are applauding her clarity. But we must be careful, he warned. Public sympathy can vanish as quickly as it appears. We will need to prepare a full timeline. Documentation. Proof of every transfer, every threat, every manipulation. I placed my hand on the brown folder, the same folder Walter had retrieved for me. It's all here, I said. Every dollar, every debt I paid, every sacrifice they never knew about. Blank, underscore, blank. Nora reached across the table, her eyes shining. Aunt Eleanor, what will you do now? I looked at her, feeling something shift inside me, a quiet ignition. I will do, I said slowly, what I should have done years ago. I will tell my story. Blank, underscore, blank. In the days that followed, reporters began to camp outside my building. Letters arrived, handwritten, trembling, raw, from people I had never met but somehow understood deeply. My son took my pension. My daughter forged my signature. I thought I was the only one. But one letter in particular stood out. Thank you, Eleanor. I am 74. Yesterday, for the first time, I said the word, no. I held that letter for a long time. Some fights do not destroy. Some fights awaken. Blank, underscore, blank. 2 weeks later, Miguel received a call from a well-known journalist, Natalie Cruz, host of the national program Stories of a Lifetime. She wanted to interview me. Live. In front of millions. Are you sure you want to do this? Miguel asked the night before the taping. Once you speak publicly, you cannot take anything back. Daniel will see it, so will Sabrina. I looked out at the city through my balcony window. The same city where I had walked invisibly for decades. Yes, I said, I'm ready. Blank, underscore, blank. The studio lights were blinding, but I felt no fear. Natalie Cruz sat across from me, her expression solemn, respectful. Her first question was simple. Mrs. Hart, 6 months ago, you walked into your son's wedding and exposed a truth that shocked the country. Why? I inhaled, steady. Because silence, I said, can be a form of consent. And I will never again consent to my own erasure. She nodded. And what do you say to people who believe that, no matter what, a mother should forgive? I looked directly into the camera, as though looking into Daniel's eyes. I will always love my son, I said, but loving someone does not mean allowing them to destroy you. Love without respect is not love. It is captivity. Blank, underscore, blank. When the interview ended, there were tears in the control room. Crew members embraced me. Natalie squeezed my hand. Mrs. Hart, she whispered, you may have just changed lives tonight. Blank, underscore, blank. That night, as I returned to my apartment, exhausted yet peaceful, Walter, Nora, and Monica were waiting in the hallway with takeout dinner and quiet smiles. You spoke for all of us, Walter said. No, I corrected gently. I spoke for myself, and that, at my age, is enough. 2 years have passed since the night that divided my life into a before and after. As I write these words, I am sitting on the same balcony where I once watered my plants and silently endured the humiliations I believed I had to tolerate in the name of motherhood. How different the world looks when you finally place a price on your dignity. This morning, as they do every week, the staff at the Eleanor Hart Foundation for the Protection of Seniors sent me new cases to review, 23 already. Each one more painful than the last. Children forcing their parents to sign over houses. Grandchildren threatening to withhold visits unless money is given. Spouses isolating elders for control. The faces change, but the cruelty is the same. I founded the foundation with part of the inheritance I once reserved for my son. And in 2 years, we have helped more than 400 seniors reclaim not just their property, but their self-respect. We provide lawyers, social workers, therapists, warriors of quiet justice. Walter Boone, once just a neighbor, is now my vice president. He gives public talks titled, "Kindness is not weakness." He likes to say, "My golden years turned into the best detective work of my life." Nora Kane moved into the apartment next door last year. After leaving an unhappy marriage, she told me, "I chose to live beside the bravest woman I know." She now runs our educational division, teaching others how to detect financial manipulation within families. Monica Patel manages property recovery. Miguel Alvarez handles all legal and accounting matters. Together, they have recovered over $3 million in stolen or coerced assets. Yes, $3 million. And yet, people still ask me the same question. Do you miss Daniel? The answer is not simple. I miss the boy who used to run to me with scraped knees and secrets. I miss the laughter we once shared. I miss the illusion of the son I thought I had. But I do not miss the man who chose greed over love. Who watched me be humiliated and said nothing. Who met with lawyers to declare me incompetent. Love does not require submission. And forgiveness does not require reunion. Daniel attempted to contact me 3 times in 2 years. First, 6 months after the television interview. His tone was bitter. Second, when his son, Noah Hart, was born. Third, 3 months ago, when Sabrina left him, taking the child and half of what little he had left. Each time, his reason for calling was the same. Money. Never an apology, never accountability, never love. His final message to me was, "Mom, your pride is more important than your grandson." To which I answered, "Daniel, my dignity is exactly as important as my grandson. I pray he learns that lesson better than you did." I have not heard from him since. But I think of Noah. A child I have not held. A child who may grow up hearing lies about the woman who refused to be used. For him, I have created a trust fund, managed by Miguel, to be opened when he turns 18. He may never knock on my door. But one day, he will know that his grandmother did not abandon her family. She protected herself from it. People often expect my story to end with reconciliation. It does not. There are no family dinners, no holiday miracles, no tearful embraces. There is something better. There is peace. I sleep without fear. I walk without trembling. I speak without asking permission. Last month, I stood before a committee of lawmakers to advocate for stronger protections against elder financial abuse. When I finished, a senator said to me, "Mrs. Hart, you do not speak like a victim." I answered, "Because I am not. I am a survivor." If I could speak to the woman I once was, the Eleanor who walked into that ballroom trembling but unbroken, I would tell her, "Have courage. What is about to happen will be painful. But on the other side of this pain is a life you never imagined. A life of respect, of purpose, of peace. My story may never end with forgiveness. But it ends with freedom. And tonight, before I close this chapter, I leave one message for anyone who has ever felt trapped by the people they love. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not selfish for choosing peace. You are not heartless for refusing to be used. You are not too old to start again. Sometimes, the only way to save a relationship is to let it end." Did my story touch you? Where in the world are you listening from? Tell me in the comments. If you'd like to hear more real-life stories like this, your support helps keep their voices alive. With love, Eleanor Hart.